Okay, so and this lecture will be updated. So I'm joined by my co moderator, but he'll be heading the moderating this afternoon. We have JJ, Arturo Tablan, and for tech, there's also Ara1, who is also the host. So if you have any questions, you can private message either me or JJ. And we also have or if you have issues with tech, you can also private message Ara1. All right. And we will be reading your questions or your comments later, but feel free to also start a discussion on chat. Before we start, let me just give a few announcements. So as everyone knows, the start of semester is on March 17, I think. So we'll be updating you with the schedule, and I think there's students here who will be starting with their field school. So if you have any questions regarding field school, you feel or if you want to start discussing it, you can PM JJ, right? They can.
Yeah, Archaeosoc has definitely sent out a couple emails and messages through various means. But if you're one of the students who will be participating in the field school and not have contacted me already via various channels, please do so. I want to keep you up to date with all the latest information so that you can participate with the field school.
So just feel free to PM JJ, or if you want to discuss the field school, I think there's a messenger group already. If you don't have messenger, so just email JJ so they can find ways to still connect you with the rest of the students. So don't let the lack of Facebook keep you off the discussions. Okay. Another announcement this is very significant for other people. IPPA already sent out their call for abstracts. So feel free to check out this group, this website, and there's a lot of other talks here relevant to our talk today. There's the panel on the future of the maritime heritage in Asia. So that's something that you might be interested in. Alternatively, there are other talks, there are other sessions that will be headed by people from ASP. There is, and also from the Philippines. I think one of them is here. Andrea Cosalan will be heading this, Unity in Diversity. She mentions that it's basically looking into how South and Southeast Asia data or data sets could complement or support each other despite the historical interactions, because despite the historical interactions between the regions, there's very little active research collaboration. So that's something that you might be interested in submitting papers for, or it's something that you might also be interested in looking into. I won't pull up my panel, but it's on jar burials as usual. So let's be nerdy and talk about jars from island and mainland Southeast Asia. So I'm joined by our colleagues from the National Museum as well. So if you just want to listen, or if you have a research regarding jar burials, feel free to join in. All right. And I guess that's all for Michelle Eusebio also sent out, Dr. Michelle Eusebio sent out an invitation as well. So you might have gotten that from in your emails. Just check out the IPPA sessions. All right. This will be in November. Alternatively, speaking of conferences, there's also the Bagong Bayan conference. Unfortunately, I couldn't pull up the poster on time, but there's a Bagong Bayan conference, and many of you might have received the the invites. It's stories of place and identity in the Philippines. So one of the speakers is also Dr. Grace Barreto Tesoro. A keynote speaker is also Dr. Ikin, I think. So she will be there. So, and in the panel 6, Dr. Grace Barreto Tesoro will talk about the um, Pinagbayanan project, and Jelly Galang on the Parian of Manila and Chinatown, and Dr. Dada Dokot will talk about the unmaking myths and miracles in the town of Dollars, Philippines. All right. Dr. Michelle Eusebio also mentioned that there's check out session number 19 in IPPA. That's her and Amy Jordan's panel, Archaeology and Dramatic Times, looking at human resiliency and sustainability through archaeology in the Indo-Pacific. So that's all. All right. So if anyone doesn't have any other, maybe I missed something, any other announcements? None, JJ? All right. Okay. So I guess it's for, okay. None anymore, JJ?
No, all good.
All right. So I guess we can start. JJ will introduce our speaker for today, which is a very great time for us to listen. So JJ, please take it away.
All right. Yeah, so today I have the very pleasurable honor of introducing Dr. Gay or Dr. Ligaya Lacsina. She's one of the newest faculty members at ASP, but has been in archaeology for quite some time now. She's a maritime archaeologist whose specific interest is in Southeast Asian watercraft construction. She finished her PhD in archaeology at Flinders University in South Australia with her dissertation, which was focused on examining the Butuan boats. These boats were excavated in Butuan City during the 1970s. And yeah, she, again, has a lot of experience in archaeology, receiving her master's from the University of the Philippines in 2009, focusing on the Batanes and the Ijangs. She previously worked at the Cultural Heritage Division as a researcher and curator at the National Museum from 2016 to 2021. Now we have the pleasure of having her as a professor teaching various courses, including maritime archaeology. So I would definitely be interested in attending that class. So without further ado, Dr. Gay Lacsina.
Thank you very much, JJ. Thanks for that introduction. Thank you to Anna and Ara for inviting me. And thanks to everyone here for taking your time out of the day to join BINALOT and listen to my talk. So let me share my screen. Is that on full screen now?
Yep, full screen.
Okay, cool. So I'll be talking about at least 1,500 years of Lashed-Lug boats in and around Southeast Asia. That's a bit of a squirrely title because it's hard to make these firm labels and boxes around material culture. But before we start, yeah, so like JJ mentioned, my dissertation was mostly examining the Butuan boats. And for this paper, I want to look, widen the focus more on similar boats that are seen in our neighboring regions and mostly in Southeast Asia. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the term Lashed-Lug boats, on this slide, the title slide, these are planks of boats. And what you see protruding from them are what are archaeologists term as lugs. So they're protrusions carved out from the planks of the insides of boats. And in fact, in some of these lugs, you can still see the fragments of ropes that used to tie parts of boats to them. So in Southeast Asia, particularly in plank-built boats, That means boats that are made up from planks, which they're not very common anymore these days. The planks are fastened by being edge joined shell first. That means the planks of the boats are assembled first, and then the frames come after that. That's the opposite of what modern boat building does. It's shell first boat building is actually not just found in Southeast Asia, but in a lot of old traditional boat building around the world. And you still see various examples of this. So the planks are joined using either dowels, that's these here, and perhaps also, especially in older examples, lacing, stitching, and sewing. Now the terminology here is a bit problematic. Some people prefer one term over the other, but I'll use lacing for this paper just for the sake of avoiding confusion. But of course, other people will have different preferences. But in Southeast Asia, where you do have lacing slash stitching slash sewing, the ligatures pass through they don't go through the entire width of the plank, like you see in other examples. For example, in South Asia, where you have sewn boats, where you see, can you see my pointer? Well, you
Yes.
see the sewing goes through the entire thickness of the planks, and you can actually see from the outside of the boats that a boat is sewn or stitched. Whereas in Southeast Asia, you wouldn't be able to see because it's all internal fastening. Now, so back to lashed lugs. So these lugs, you'll see in this example here, when one of the Butuan boats was reassembled for exhibition in the National Museum. Unfortunately, this was dismantled in 2015, I think. But you can see how the planks are arranged so that the lugs align with one another. And they're drilled with holes so that rope can pass through and tie, in this case, a frame. So the frame is tied to one of the lugs here, and then you would imagine that it would go through this entire row of lugs in the same manner. So that when you assemble a boat, you have a number of planks with a series of lugs aligned with each other so that they can make almost something like a ladder out of the frames. And in this case, thwarts or other components of the boats. So that is what we call in Southeast Asia lashed-lug boats. I have an example here of a Viking ship, which is a lot of people cite as a similar construction in a way. You can see here in the lower hull of the boat, there are cleats. In Scandinavia, they call the lugs cleats. And they serve the same purpose, to be able to fasten frames to them. One difference that that Scandinavian and Viking ships have with the Southeast Asian boat building is that in Scandinavia, in the Viking ships, their planks overlap. Whereas in lashed-lug boats, the planks are made to join flushly with each other, again with these dowels. So in Scandinavia, these would be nailed or stapled to each other. Now, Southeast Asian plank-built boats today no longer use lugs. So instead, the frames are directly nailed to the planks. So in these examples, one is in southern Mindanao in the Philippines, and another is in Indonesia. It's clear here in the picture with the little girl in Indonesia. These are wooden nails or trunnels that are driven through the frames and into the planks. So these are not lashed-lug boats. Lashed-lug boats have mostly disappeared from Southeast Asia. In smaller vessels, such as these canoes, you'll see lugs, but not used for lashing. So in these two cases, these lugs are carved out from the base of a canoe, and they're used to seating for rowers to sit on, or in this case, this is a mast step where you could fasten a mast for a sail. So you still see that today. It's still a pretty common practice to do that. Now, when Europeans arrived in Southeast Asia, they were mostly struck by how well the plank-built boats were constructed. So I love showing these three quotes by Rebelio, who's a Portuguese in the Moluccas in 1569, Alcina, who was a Spanish priest in the Central Philippines in 1668, and Alfred Russel Wallace in 1869 in Eastern Indonesia. And they're basically saying the same thing. Rebelio said that the boats are made so tight that the seams are barely visible. Alcina said that the seams between one board and the next so joined that they seem to be of a single piece. And Wallace said that it is often difficult to find a place where a knife blade can be inserted between the joints. So I believe that, yeah, the skill in making these so-called watertight boats was really built in for a long time in Southeast Asia. And you would really have to, looking at the environment of Southeast Asia, it's all water. And so moving on to Lashed-Lug boats, this is a list of the evidences that conservatively range almost 1,600 years, actually, definitely more than 1,500 years. And we'll be going through this, well, at least a lot of these examples for this lecture. By the way, in this map, the red dots are the examples of the archaeological or material culture, because not all of them are actually excavated archaeologically. And then in the yellow dots, these are the historical accounts of the 3 Europeans that I quoted earlier. And then the more recent ethnographic accounts are the green dot here. It's also interesting to note that only these 3 boats, these shipwrecks that are highlighted are actual shipwrecks, which is to say that they were found underwater. Most of the other examples of Lashed-Lug boats in Southeast Asia were found in environments similar to what we found in Butuan, in waterlogged environments. In the case of Butuan, these sites are suspected to be, well, we're pretty much sure that they're located where the old river used to pass. In the rest of Southeast Asia, you have the same old riverbanks, and sometimes along an old beach, an extinct beach, and yeah, those sort of examples. So it's something to think about, that if we were to look for more old boats, not necessarily Lashed-Lug boats, we would want to be looking in these sorts of environments. So we start with the oldest example that we have. That's the Pontian boat, which was found first in the early 1900s, and it was re-examined later by Gibson Hill in 1952. It was radiocarbon dated, and the dates coincide with some materials, relative dating of associated materials. And if you compare Pontian with the Quanlupad timbers, which were found in Thailand, sorry, let me go back to Pontian boat if I didn't mention. This is found in peninsular Malaysia. And the Kwanlukpad timbers are quite unusual because if you might not be able to tell from these drawings, but these timbers do not appear to have dowel holes in them. So when you see holes such as these, where they go through one edge of the plank up to one surface, that makes an L-shaped hole, and that's more for stitching or for lacing. And it's not quite, it hasn't been determined whether this comes from one or several boats, but the timbers are now in a museum in Thailand. And I had the opportunity to look at some of them. Some of them are quite massive and really unlike what we have seen, what I have seen in Butuan. And you'll see a number of different styles in the way the lugs were designed. This is the Kolampinisi boat, also in Indonesia, dated to the 5th and 7th centuries. This is another boat with very shallow lugs in this case. They were probably wore off over time. But here you see it's a combination of dowel connections and stitching. So whenever you see from this view here, holes drilled through the top and they match with holes on the edges of the planks, that means these are likely stitching or lacing holes. Samberejo boats, also in Indonesia. So a lot of the Lashed-Lug boats are found in Indonesia. And again, you see that the planks are joined with dowels, and also there's the stitching holes would have carried rope to fasten the planks together, to tighten them together. Another dowel and doweled and stitched boat is the Punjal Harja boat. And I'm very happy to have Agni Mokhtar in the audience today, and maybe she can talk about Punjal Harja a bit later. She did her master's thesis, her Masters of Maritime Archaeology thesis on the Punjal Harja boat. Fantastic work. And it's the Punjal Harja itself is quite fantastic because it's the most intact example that we have so far of any of the Lashed-Lug boats. You see a lot of the ropes survived. Not only did they survive, but also the different components of the boats. And you can really see in detail how these were used. And they also gave a lot of clues to understanding how the Butuan boats might have been constructed. And we have more pictures of the details here. Really fantastic. I believe that Agni can tell us that the Punjal Harja was disassembled to be able to conserve it, and now it's been partially reconstructed and is on exhibit. I think at the site. Agni can tell us later. And here's a very detailed example of how the planks would have been stitched together. It's not clear here because there's still mud in the picture, but this line divides the two planks. And then there was, I think, a bamboo slat or a wooden slat tied across to protect presumably to protect the planks from wearing or the rope from wearing. Another quite unusual Lashed-Lug boat is the Chowtan boat, dated to the 9th century. This was looted off Vietnam, and this is actually in someone's private property. But again, you have really fantastic preservation of some of the rope. This looks like Cabo Negro, or it's Arenca pinnata. It's a sugar palm, and a lot of the archaeological sources or evidences are of sugar palm. Interestingly, we don't have a lot of historical accounts describing the construction of Lashed-Lug boats, but most of them do mention rattan instead of Cabo Negro rope. And then one of the few examples of a shipwreck of a Lashed-Lug boat. This is the Cheribon shipwreck. Quite massive. It really was a full-sized ship carrying thousands, cargo numbering in the thousands. And then, of course, there are the Butuan boats, which I studied. I can talk about these in much greater detail and for very long time, but I'll avoid doing that now, as I've done that before, and then there will be more opportunities in the future. But it isn't with the Butuan boats that you start to see the disappearance of the planks being stitched or laced together. So the boats are exclusively fastened by dowels. The exceptions would be for boats 5 and boats 1, where some of the dowels are locked by a wooden pin, as you see in the inset here. So this is the dowel inserted into the plank, and then a wooden pin is inserted through the top of the plank into the dowel to be able to lock it in place to keep the planks from slipping apart. So boats 1, 2, 4, and 5 are Lashed-Lug boats. In the 70s, there was another smaller boat that was excavated that's supposed to be Lashed-Lug. I presume it to be this. It also looks to be Lashed-Lug. And boat 9, which was excavated in the 2010s, which is unusual because it's not Lashed-Lug. It's quite massive. It's at least twice the size of most of the other Butuan boats. And we do, with the National Museum, we hope to collaborate with them and re-excavate boat 9 to maybe figure out what's happening here. It could be because of its size, we are not actually seeing the actual planks, the outer planks of the hull. This might be a deck or something, but yeah, it would be very interesting to look at. So the radiocarbon dating for the wood of the Butuan boats falls to between the 8th and 10th centuries. There was also another piece of a piece of rope from another boat that was recovered by a local resident that also falls within the same range. Sungay Lamu. This is another one that there's not much written about. This photo was just offered a couple of years ago by a colleague in Brunei, Han Maidin, who'd seen a post that I did when I was working with the National Museum. I made a post about Lashed-Lug boats in Southeast Asia, and he said, hey, we have one in Brunei as well. So this falls somewhere between the 10th and 14th centuries. It would be interesting to look at that. It looks like quite a massive plank and different lug holes as well. The Lingga shipwreck was also also excavated in Indonesia, Indonesian waters, and Flecker wrote about this just recently in 2019. We're pretty, it's been sort of promising in the recent years in that underwater archaeologists in the region are starting to pay closer attention to the construction of watercraft, where perhaps in shipwrecks, maybe the focus before was more on the cargo. So it would really be interesting to look at older shipwrecks or shipwrecks that might still be in the water to see if there might be examples of this very distinctive construction feature of Southeast Asian boat building. And then in the southern Philippines, this is the Gujangan shipwreck. This was looted before it was reported to the National Museum. And there are maybe around 10 examples of the quite poor condition planks, but they do show very clearly that these are Lashed-Lug boats. So yeah, in a slide, here's a summary of the archaeological examples. It's pretty interesting because that's where the archaeology stops. And then we haven't to date found any later examples in the archaeology. I'm not sure why that is. It just might be that as smaller boats, the bigger focus was on trading vessels that were built according to European design. But if it weren't for the historical and ethnographic accounts, it would seem as if the material culture ended there. But in fact, we hear again from Rebelio, who says that that cleats and lugs are left protruding, and then ropes are used to fasten both components to them. And then also Alcina also mentions the tambucos, which are the lugs or the cleats that are carved from the planks. And then also Wallace, who talks about how the boats were constructed with the cleats used to fasten both components to them. And then in the early 1900s, Cornell was able to record, this is from, I think, Halmahera in Indonesia. These drawings here, he didn't really describe them, but that's pretty clear that these are Lashed-Lugs. And then, except for these wading boats in La Malera, Lashed-Lug boat building seemed to disappear. So Barnes was there in the 1970s and he republished. I'm sorry that I don't have better quality pictures, but you can see the first couple of planks constructing these boats do have lugs, and then also how rope is used to go through the lugs and tie the frames and the thwarts to the lugs. And what's really promising is that at least some remnants of Lashed-Lug boat building might still survive here in La Malera and continue the tradition of Lashed-Lug boats. I think that maybe Agni can update us about that as well. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I meant to highlight these red dots, these red circles, where remnants of lugs seem to still be used, and this time instead of rope, they use fishing line to fasten these seats to the boat. And then outside of Southeast Asia, you have parallels, but not quite in the same way that lugs are used in Southeast Asia. So when I say in and around Southeast Asia, I'm being quite flexible in my meaning. So even in the Indian Ocean, it might seem quite far, but the Maldives has been postulated to be a stop where, or at least a pit stop for the Austronesians before they sailed to Madagascar. But you see, when Miller was there in 1993, Lashed-Lugs had disappeared, but older boats, at least the older people remembered using Lashed-Lugs before, but it became too difficult and expensive to cut the hardwood for lugs. And so then it was only used for coconut wood. But with that, the way that frames are made to sit on lugs, the Maldives boat builders found that it made the wood rotten because there was a space between the lugs and the plank. So they stopped using Lashed-Lug boat building. And that may be a clue to why it eventually disappeared after hundreds of years in Southeast Asia as well. And then here's an example in the Solomon Islands. This time in a small canoe that used planks. Here. And this Yami boat, in the past I cited the Yami boat as being related, but because of this lug or cleat here, but I'm not so sure anymore. This might just be a handle and just might be just a very distant relative of Lashed-Lug boat building. And to end my show and tell, just to summarize that we went to really, again, very conservatively, more than 1,500 years. If we consider the younger date range of the Pontian boat of 430 AD. In fact, it's actually almost 1,600 years of lashed-lug boats in Southeast Asia that may be still continuing in La Malera. Yes, just to end. This is a very peculiar, illustration of lashed-lug boats that's in Scott's publication in 1982 in Philippine Boat Building and Seamanship, I believe. Yeah, quite confusing in the assembly here, but I'm almost positive that I saw a similar drawing in Blair and Robertson, and I thought I took a note of it, but I must have lost the note. So if someone comes across a similar drawing of this kind of lashed-lug construction, it's quite unique. Please do let me know. And I'll end there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Gay, for sharing that wonderful presentation. I like the sort of timeline that you've presented of all the different lashed-lug boats and then the sort of evolution that we could, I guess, sort of see. Yeah, so for anyone interested in asking questions, feel free to type it out in the chat or use the raise hand function, which can be found in the bottom right of your screen under the reactions tab.
Gay, so do you agree with that in hypothesis or that conclusion that the Lashed-Lug technology lost against other technologies of boat building because the lugs rot, but don't nails also rot, corrode, you know? And what's your take on it? Why is it not prevalent anymore?
Yeah, that example that said that the wood rats was from the Maldives, and they did mention that some of their boats use cocoa lumber.
That explains it.
Yeah, that might be one thing.
Now,
but there was another. Miller also mentioned that, well, because if you carve planks with lugs, they have to be at least twice as thick as you need them to be able to accommodate the lugs that you're going to whittle down, right?
Yes.
So if you're getting commercial lumber, then it's difficult and expensive to be able to procure the materials that you need.
Which takes me to my original question for that. Have you done a study, or has anyone done a study on the actual wood use for the lugs, and if based on what evidence we have, is the wood used for the lugs the same as the wood used for the planks? For example, for the barangay or the Butuan boats, or anywhere else in Southeast Asia.
Well, yeah, because the lugs are carved out from the same
wood. Yeah,
they're one piece, so they would be. And about the types of trees that were used, there's a really wide variety. So will I be able to share my screen?
You should be able to. Yes, I think you're considered as a co-host.
Okay. So these are just the types of trees found in the 5 Butuan boats.
Wow, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Good and very good.
Boat one is really something because it has the least number of surviving planks, but the most number of trees used to construct it. And then,
Fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not very good with tree species, but yeah, in other examples in Southeast Asia, there were other types of kinds of wood used for those.
And why do you think that latching didn't survive in these sites and survive so well in that site in Indonesia?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what the
Mm.
if the kind of environment might have, and also maybe the condition of the boats when they were abandoned.
Mhm.
It's very possible because I do think that the Butuan boats were abandoned before they were uh, shall we say lost to the flooding and then overburden that buried them. And perhaps Agni, would you like to chime in? Why would the Punchal Harja Agni Mokhtar is here? He
Well,
can chime
well,
um, preservation.
just a small question. Where's La Malera?
That is in. It's better if I show a map. It's in the south. Hold on, I'm getting there. Here.
Hi, Gay.
Hi, Agni.
Hi, yeah. The host just allowed me to unmute myself. Thank you very much. Yeah. No, you finish with all your answers, and maybe I can add a few things.
Yeah, so Sir Vic, the green dot here, that is La Malera. And Punchal Harjo, wow, I'm not sure anymore. I don't think I can be able to point it out. But yeah, it might be that when Punchal Harjo was eventually abandoned, it was in much better condition. So that might be one thing. Why do you think, Agni, that the Punchal Harjo was preserved much better than any of the other books?
Yeah, I think it most likely due to the lost condition of the boat when they were abandoned. Yeah, I agree with you because other sites we only found the planks. I mean, I think they're already in a poor condition before people just probably dump the planks somewhere or like completely abandon the boat. But yeah, I guess that's the thing. But also Punjul Harjo itself is like the planks is a bit thicker than the average other Lashed-Lug boats that we found so far. But probably that's also play a role to some extent of the preservation of the boat, I guess. And anyway, a very great presentation as always, Gay. But because you mentioned my name a few times, so I feel really bad if I don't kind of like comment and everything. Uh, and about the La Malera, I also very happy to share here that early this year, so in January, I went there, and the tradition is still in use. Like it's amazing to kind of like see people still using the Lashed-Lug boat there. I plan to go back probably next year or late this year to see when the building process happening. So fingers crossed.
Fantastic. Is it still like this, Agni? Or
Yes.
okay.
Yes, this particular one, Kelulus, yeah, that's still there. And let me check. So when I visited there, I kind of like check how many Lashed-Lug boat are still there. There are around 20 boats using Lashed-Lug there, and it's great because the Lashed-Lug for them is a part of their kind of like sacred ritual, because it is related to their livelihood, because they use it to catch the whale, right? And they have a very deep relation in terms of faith and belief towards these whale catching activities, and that's why they are still building the Lashed-Lug boat the same way that their ancestor did. I think it's very fascinating to kind of like learn how the tradition survived, because well, I visited like other boatyard and shipyards, and of course most of them were thinking like it's very difficult, like you said, also in Maldives, where people kind of like started to feel difficult to build a Lashed-Lug boat, right? Because yeah, it is difficult than the modern one, of course. But because in La Malera, because they have a very strong, deep-rooted belief related to this specific tradition, then it can survive until now.
That's great. Thank you for that, Agni.
Yep, no worries.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That was some very interesting and useful insights, especially in relation to the Southeast Asian maritime environment, I guess. And I don't know the right words to use there, but yeah, that was very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, Sir Vic, go ahead.
Oh, that's such a wonderful insight, and thank you for sharing that. I think you are right about that. That the persistence of the technology has to be connected to the persistence of certain kinds of appreciation of an old worldview. But in the case of La Malera, it is this entire practice of whale hunting. Which brings me to my question, Gay. What is the? Have you do you have a sense of how old this technology is? Do you think it goes back to the earliest time of maritime technology in Southeast Asia, island Southeast Asia at least? Uh,
Yeah.
do you want to do you have a hypothesis?
Well, yeah, definitely it would have. I can't say how far back it might have extended, but yeah, they would have built it up from something else. Now, if it came, like I know Horridge is saying that it came with the Austronesians. From the
Is it have you attempted to look at some keywords, right, or key terms,
ah,
and then and see if in Robert Bluss's list, no, a comparative Austronesian list, whether it's there, right, or at least its reconstruction goes back to what part of the transformation of the Austronesian language. That would be an interesting thing if you haven't done that yet, no?
yeah, that might be something to pursue. I
Because
know
I'm sure all these boat terms, the parts of the boats in the region will have, for example, the lug, right, or the lashing, or the planks will have like similar, very similar roots. No, I would
at least the
say.
lugs do. Yeah, the lugs
Yeah.
are called tambuko or tamboko. So that seems to be one
Oh,
thing
yeah,
that's
that's
at
interesting.
least
Yeah.
Philippines and Indonesia, and through time that seems to have
Mm.
survived. I know the Sama Bajau, they still know the word tambuko,
There
even
you
though
go.
they don't use that in their construction anymore.
Wow, that's good. That's good information.
Yeah. But yeah, that would be a good way to pursue maybe how far back the boat building technology went. Um, yeah, it's interesting though how massive the timbers were used in the earlier examples. Looking at Pontian and Lukpad, um, both on the peninsula of Southeast Asia. how that might have been maybe used for different purposes and functions.
Yeah, and I guess out of personal curiosity, do we know how far these at least from your research, like the Butuan boats, how far they could I guess travel throughout the sea? Could they go, in sort of deep sea scenarios, or were they mostly just sort of coastal types of maritime boats?
Yeah, well, we know in Southeast Asia that the boats did travel long distances. It would have depended though on how they were. Let's see. Let me go back. So, for example, for the Butuan boats, let me show you. So this is sort of a profile of the Butuan boats. They're flat or round bottom boats, and that. So if you ask about these boats specifically, usually flat or round bottom boats are used to travel inland or along coasts, but not open ocean. But when we say Lashed-Lug boats, and when Alcina was describing boat construction, the construction was used for different types of boats. In fact, Alcina talked about boats with keels, and these did travel all over the archipelago and also to the rest of Southeast Asia.
Okay.
Yeah, so it depends on which case you're talking about. Yeah. Also, it's interesting that in this entire list of Lashed-Lug boats, most of them don't have keels. Just like the Butuan boats don't have keels. It might have something to do that only a few of them are shipwrecks. I can't recall if the Cheribon in Indonesia, it must have had a keel since it was quite a large ship.
Gay, that's why I think it's very important to complete the excavation of that large boat.
Yeah.
What you call that? Butuan 10, is it?
9. Butuan
9.
boat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because that might give because if I recall, there's a debate among you guys in maritime, especially boat archaeology in the region, whether these types of boats can really travel long distances by just hugging the coast and do all these extensive exchanges, or not, right? So, but maybe that debate would be mute if we actually see contemporary boats with keels in the same area or the same time period or even older.
Yeah. Yeah. Though I do guess it might be better looking for shipwrecks in the water.
Well, that's good too. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sort of struck by the idea of looking for sites such as this, old rivers maybe, and
Yeah.
surveying. So if
There are
anyone,
many waiting for you, Gay. Don't worry. Along that Agusan River.
yeah, and any volunteers, not
Yeah.
just me.
Yes, I'm sure a lot of ASP students would be delighted in this opportunity, myself included, of course.
All welcome.
Unless there are any other questions, I think this is a good time to round up this rather interesting, both in terms of content and for the first times of BINALOT Talk. Again, thank you, Ma'am Gay, for this really insightful BINALOT Talk. I myself know that having interest in maritime archaeology, but no proper proper linkage or introduction to it was very welcome by this talks on these boats, but also really interested to follow up with your course whenever maritime archaeology is offered. So I'll be sure to keep in tune for that. But for everyone else, thank you for joining us here today. Hopefully we can see you next week, right, Ara? Do we have one scheduled for next week?
Yes, for next week we have Panthropocene, Finding a Pre-Industrial Pantropical Anthropocene with Dr. Patrick Roberts from the Max Planck Institute.
Okay, yeah, yes, that will be in the chat. And also follow us on our Facebook page to get further details on that. And with that, hopefully we'll see you next week. Thank you everyone for joining us today on this BINALOT. Yeah, thank you.